Hi there, and welcome to a Let's Type episode from the Commodore 64 Appreciation Society. This is a series where I reach back into the past and type out a program from an old computer magazine, and then when I finish typing it in, I play it. Today's type-in is a fast arcade-style game called Beekeeper from the July 1984 issue of Compute's Gazette. And typing it in takes me right back to a specific time. The summer of '84 was amazing. I was about to enter grade 8, and my friends and I felt like kings of the world. We'd spent hours biking around our neighborhoods, creating new worlds while playing D&D, and blowing our allowances on Time Pilot and Ladybug. And when I wasn't doing those things, I'd be playing Commodore 64 games at a friend's place. We'd spend hours with games like Pit Stop, Archon, and Impossible Mission, and then, always before the streetlights came on, I'd bike back home to play games on my VIC-20, and of course, type in programs for magazines like Compute and Compute's Gazette. Typing in those programs taught me how computers worked. It's where I learned how to program, and after an hour or two of typing, I'd have a brand new game to play. Well, assuming I hadn't mistyped something along the way. I don't remember Beekeeper specifically from back then, but it's exactly the kind of game I loved. So I'm just as excited to get into it now, some 40 years later. Let's get typing. Beekeeper was written by Daniel Gray and was originally developed for the VIC-20. That was a terrific computer for the day, and it holds a special place in my memories. But let's face it, you're not doing much with 3.5K of RAM. So while an arcade-style game like this could squeeze every last bit of power out of the VIC, the same game would usually feel fairly modest on the far more powerful 64. What's interesting here, though, is that the editors at Compute updated the 64 version to take advantage of some of its more powerful features. So the foundation is the same, but it's been optimized in a clever way. The premise of Beekeeper is completely off the rails in that very 80s computer game kind of way. Giant bees are taking over the world. Their massive hives are engulfing cities, and their clover fields are invading valuable cropland. It's up to us, a valiant beekeeper, to locate and destroy the hives in an airplane equipped with laser guns. Actually, this might be the most 80s game premise I've ever heard, and I have many questions. But I'm just going to let them go and buy into what's happening here. In the intro, I mentioned that I spent a lot of time playing Commodore 64 games that summer, and the ads in this issue of Compute's Gazette are a perfect snapshot of what we were playing. Everyone I knew seemed to have and love Beachhead. This was the first big hit from Access Software, who later struck gold with Leaderboard Golf in the Link series. It was developed out of Roger Carver's basement and helped launch one of the most influential studios in Commodore 64 history. Infocom were the masters of text adventures. They built fully immersive worlds in an era where text was really the only way to tell a story on a computer. My personal favorite has always been The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but the original Zork trilogy is absolutely iconic. It's funny, I always remembered 1-on-1 coming out later than 1984. Regardless, it's a true sports classic, and it marked a moment when computers were finally powerful enough to start simulating real sports. Before this, video game basketball was basically sticks bouncing a ball between them. 1-on-1 introduced real moves, real personalities, and really impressive gameplay. Star League might not be the most well-known baseball game, but it was a personal favorite of mine. A friend and I used to play this and record all of our stats in a notebook. The game actually taught me how batting averages and slugging percentages are calculated. And the gameplay itself was pretty solid too. And finally, what on earth is this? Nothing says 80s television quite like Dallas, and everyone who lived through that era remembers wondering who shot JR. But I don't remember this one at all. It's an early adventure game, and apparently a pretty good one. It has a rating over 7 on Lemon 64. Anyway, back to our giant bee problem. So far, this has been a pretty breezy type-in, and it uses a lot of clever programming techniques. There's one in particular that I love, and it's a classic Commodore 64 programming trick, with a twist. In Beekeeper, you control an airplane that can move in 8 directions, and 8 custom character graphics have been created to show the plane facing those directions. So when the plane moves, the program has to do 2 things. First, it needs to display the proper character graphic, and second, it needs to actually move the plane in that direction. Beekeeper does both at once with an impressively small amount of code. Let's take a look. Commodore 64 screen memory is stored as a long string of bytes starting at address 1024. There are 40 columns per row, so addresses 1024 through 1063 make up the first row, 1064 through 1103 the next, and it continues like that down the screen. Moving a character around a screen laid out like this is fairly simple. If you want to move it right, add 1. If you want to move it down, you add 40, and diagonal movement is just combinations of those values. These offsets are consistent, and a straightforward way to program movement is with a set of if-then statements that might look something like this. This works, but it's quite verbose, and you'd need to repeat the logic for your plane, enemies, projectiles, and anything else that moves on screen. That makes it harder to reuse and a real pain to modify later. Instead, Beekeeper uses a movement table. This is the classic trick that I mentioned earlier. It reads all of the movement offsets into an array called SP, creating a table that looks like this. So SP1 represents moving right, SP2 represents down right, and so on. When the program needs to move something, it simply looks at the appropriate offset in the table and adds it to the current screen position. No long strings of if statements required. So that's already a clever technique, and it's one that a lot of Commodore 64 programmers used, but Beekeeper takes it one step further. This is the twist. It determines the direction of movement based on the character graphic being used, and then uses that to calculate the new position. The 8 custom characters used in Beekeeper are stored in character codes 33 through 40, and crucially, their order lines up with the directions in the movement table we just saw. Because those characters are numbered 33 through 40, subtracting 32 converts them into numbers 1 through 8, which line up perfectly with the movement table. So, by simply looking at which character the plane is currently using, SH, the program automatically knows which direction it should move. That's exactly what happens in this line. Subtracting 32 from SH converts that character code into a movement index from 1 to 8, MN stores the old position so it can be erased later, and P1 becomes the new screen position after applying the offset from the movement table. The actual movement on screen then happens here. First, poke MN,32 erases the old character. Then, poke P1,sh draws the airplane, using the same character code at its new location. So, by knowing what character to display, the program also knows which direction to move, all in just a few short lines of BASIC. Cool, right? This has been a fun one to type in. The code is clearly laid out, and it kind of felt like peeling layers from an onion as I worked through it. And it's a short one too. The whole thing took about 45 minutes. As an aside, this is just the second type-in that I've done on the Commodore 64 Ultimate, and I'm loving the experience. Typing 64 games on a 64 keyboard just feels right. Alright, These last few lines here contain the data for the custom characters, and then we end with a return statement on line 890, and we're done. On disk, we can see the game takes up 12 blocks, or just about 3K. It's a perfect size for the VIC-20. Since I was using a proofreader, I'm not expecting many, if any, bugs, so hopefully it just runs on the first try. Syntax error? Come on. Oh, it's on line 664. I know what I did. Yeah. Before typing it out, I listed the contents of the disk just to make sure it was empty, and apparently I pressed return over the 664 blocks free section. It's a goofy error for sure, but a really easy fix. And it's kind of cool to see the custom characters. Alright, let's try this again. Okay, nice. This is a good start. I love that intro screen. The way it shows the enemy characters and the points for killing them is classic arcade energy. Okay, here we go. We'll start at the beginner skill level, of course. Here's our clover field. Huh, I'm stuck behind a clover and... oh no. Okay, I guess I deserve that. Okay, now I'm getting it. The plane keeps moving forward until you change your joystick direction. Take that, B. Oh, that high-pitched sound is annoying. Why does it last so long? Damn. Good thing we start with 8 lives. Huh. For a 3K game written all in BASIC, this is extremely fast and responsive. I could totally do without that tone, though. Die, giant bee. Oh, and here's a crab. Not sure what a giant crab is doing here, but like I said earlier, no questions. But I'm not sure I like that it's littering the screen with more clovers. That reminds me a bit of the spiders and centipede, actually. Enough with you. To be honest, though, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing. I've got a bunch of points, but is that all there is? Oh, I get it. I really should pay more attention to the instructions. But we never did that as kids, so why start now? Anyway, the idea here is to remove all the bees from the hive, which is at the bottom of the screen. I thought that was just a decoration at first. In the instructions, hey, I did skim them, it said that to win, you have to get rid of all the bees. I just didn't realize those were the bees I was supposed to get. There are 120 of them here, 3 rows times 40. That is a lot of giant bees. And meanwhile, those enemy bees and crabs keep coming right at me. I need to figure out a better strategy here. Yeah, I'm playing again. Okay, I feel like I'm starting to figure it out, and it's quite cool. The enemies make a beeline towards you. See what I did there? Before they turn away when you do. So I think the strategy is to do a dive bombing run, veer away before the enemy gets too close, and then repeat. It's good that the game gives you lots of men. That constant tone, though, not so good. The weirdest thing is that it doesn't seem to be happening all the time. Sometimes it plays for a long time, sometimes it doesn't. So there's a lot of rinse and repeat going on here. I've now completed 3 levels and I'm on the 4th swarm, but it's all the same. It doesn't get any more difficult, and because it keeps refreshing my lives, it's basically the same game over and over. I think a cool change would be to have each swarm get a little bit harder, or maybe just don't refresh all your lives. Maybe grant a new one every 10,000 points or whatever. Those sound like good changes, but the change I'm most interested in is getting rid of that horrible sound. Fixed it. There wasn't actually a correction in a later edition, but it turned out to be a pretty simple problem. The game sets up a variable called CM, which is equal to 54272. This is the base address for the SID chip. When your laser hits something, lines 310 and 311 play the sound. The first few pokes set up the sound, and then poke CM plus 4, 33 actually plays it. The problem? Nothing then tells it to release the note. There's no note off command. It just plays until you turn your ship. That's why the tone would be sustained for a long time in some cases and then go away in others. So, I added some code to line 320 that releases it. What I find most interesting is that the editors at Compute never noticed it. Maybe they were playing with the volume off. And I'll say the game is much more enjoyable with the short tone. These higher levels though, not as enjoyable. The enemies are a lot faster on the higher difficulties. Oh, and while I was working on that sound problem, I discovered an interesting artifact left over from the VIC-20 version. Remember when I was a bit confused as to why the level ended before I cleared all the bees? Well, that's because the variable determining how many bees you need to clear is set for the VIC-20 screen. The VIC-20 screen is 22 characters wide. 3 rows of bees give you 66. To change this so you have to clear all the enemies, you'd simply have to change the value of AQ to 120. But that probably means I'd never clear a level. I think I'll keep it at 66. Strange sound issues aside, this is a seriously impressive game. It's really fast for a basic program, and it's tough. The enemy behaviors are fun and actually feel quite lifelike. It just feels right when a bee flits away after I change directions. There are some features that I think would be neat to add. For example, if we're going to keep the number of bees to clear at 66, I think having a counter would be nice so we know how much further we have to go. And improving the level progression, as mentioned before, would be good too. If you'd like to play Beekeeper, or better yet, play around with the code to make your own changes, you can. It's been posted on our Discord. Come and check it out. The link to join is in the video description. And congrats to Daniel Gray for developing a truly impressive game, thanks to Mark for the recommendation, and a huge thanks to Compute's Gazette for publishing it in that terrific summer of 1984. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like or subscribing. And if you have any experiences with Beekeeper, Compute's Gazette, or typing in your own programs, I'd love to hear about them. Drop them in the comments. Hope to see you again.